So now I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. What did you learn about yourself from answering the questions from the last part of the first half of this lesson? What did you learn about the learning environment that you've created in your classroom? What surprised you? What are you motivated to change? And what are you most proud of that you'd like to explore even more to improve on it? Did you decide that your classroom is teacher-centered or student-centered? And remember, you're the only one in the room there, so you can be honest. Don't worry. If the model you've always used turns out to be teacher-centered, are you considering changing it so that your students have more agency and are more active in the tasks? Just think about it. Truthfully, whenever teachers say to me they're exhausted at the end of the day, I say to them, then you're doing too much work. Your students need to be exhausted by the end of the day. They're the ones who need to be doing more work in the classroom than you. You know the content already. They're the ones who need to wrap their minds and bodies around new information. And if we're going to be real about this, your work is before you walk into the classroom. Their work is while they're in the classroom. Unless, of course, you're a preschool teacher and then you don't stop no matter how much you plan beforehand. You all are superheroes. In any case, so much of learning through phenomenon-based learning projects is letting students gain agency over their learning. And the only way that's going to happen is if we let go of the reins so tightly and become more flexible so that our students gain more responsibility. Otherwise, when they walk out of the classroom, they're going to be looking for someone to tell them what to do and how to do it instead of walking tall and knowing they have a pretty good idea of what needs to be done and how to do it, or at least know how to find the answers. That's pretty critical. So part of our work is anticipating emotional triggers so that we have a strong affective domain. So let's do the last two emotional triggers of this lesson, and we can strengthen our affective domain so that our students feel incredible when they walk into our classroom. Ready? Apathy is another important emotional block in learning. If we want our students to participate really effectively in phenomenon-based learning projects, we need to be aware that inappropriate behavior often stems from apathy. But what causes it? Well, it can be a lot of different factors. What's often involved is our students' reaction to being told what to do all day in class and probably at home as well. Apathy is an indifference towards what's happening around a student, and it's often generated by feeling inconsequential or disrespected or generally invisible. One way we can anticipate this is to give them options in the daily schedules. In other words, at certain points in the day, we can have, for instance, a treasure chest of cognitively productive activities that our students will find entertaining. And what's in this treasure chest? Well, we make sure that we put activities there that support some aspect of the project that your students are working on, something, for instance, about the linguistic structure or the concept that can support them moving ahead more confidently. And in this way, we can justify the time taken by any of these activities in the chest. But they can choose any of them, and just having that choice gives them a sense of power in their daily schedule. Just sometimes, not all the time. So now I know I am shamelessly promoting my own activities, but they're also really viable and perfect for your treasure chest. So it could be, for instance, a card game that promotes the concept and images of the project or the general theme that you're working on. It could be a taboo game that involves the book or the podcast or whatever it is that your students are using as a resource. For the youngest learners, you can do sequencing of images from one of the videos that they're working on. You can do an interactive gratitude journal, which is really powerful, and the students think it's really fun, and it's actually also very proactive and uplifting. You can do a series of images they contemplate about a video that will really help them delve more into the concept of the project they're working on. So we can give different students turns to choose these activities or let the groups choose them. We can even give the students time to work by themselves if they actually need a break from group work. So in this way, apathy is vanquished, even for a short time in the worst of cases, and for long term in the best of cases, because if our students know that at some point in the day they have control, they're empowered to choose their activity, they're going to be more participatory the rest of the day. It's a really important message that you'll be giving to them so that they will take outside of the classroom as well. As far as phenomenon-based learning projects, that is one of our big goals. So the last most common emotional trigger that we're going to go over in this module that can also be very challenging for your students is insecurity. And you may be thinking, why are these students screaming? They don't look insecure. And yet, their reaction could very well be coming from a place of insecurity. So let's explore the possibility, all right? As educators, we make thousands of choices a day. Sometimes we're confident about it, sometimes we're not. But the truth is, most of us spend hours creating lessons, in this case, projects, so that our students can have a really important and usually innovative learning experience. However, what I've seen over and over again is that even with the best intentioned teachers, and I mean the best, they often find that their lessons quickly turn into chaos because they don't have something so simple in place that it's hard to believe: the norms and consequences of the class. And I say that very intentionally, not rules and punishment, norms and consequences. When I mention this to them, most of the time they say to me, oh yes, I have them. I put a sign up on the first day of class. We went over them. No one pays attention to them. All right. Fun fact, biologically, we have an attention span of about a day and a half, and that's when something was repeated within 8 hours of the first time presenting it. So it's not necessarily the attention span, but memory bandwidth. By November, December, seriously, even in October, there is no way we can expect our students to remember what the norms and consequences were, even if they're posted on the wall. They're just visual noise by that time. No one pays attention to them, especially if they had no part in creating them. And without a really clear understanding of what the norms are, and even more importantly, what the consequences are, teachers react instead of act, and that is not a great dynamic. And so the teacher's also insecure because she doesn't know how to handle different situations fairly. And the students are insecure because they don't know how the teacher is going to handle the situation. And they're watching us. Remember in the last lesson when we talked about another trigger, confusion? And this is often because authority treats students differently. Students are watching us, and they are affected by the differences we dole out, especially as consequences. The really positive side of all of this is that there is a solution. Learning goes up when students sense that they are in a safe environment, that the teacher has thought about the learning environment he wants and has put the tools in place to make sure that her vision, his vision, becomes a reality. How could we do this? Well, we grab on to that positive side and make positive norms and consequences. Positive ones. We don't put anything like what I just said, don't. They're all positives, do. And we're going to go into positive reinforcement much more in lesson 5. And also, we co-create them. And we ask our students to sign them. And we ask their guardians to sign them. And we repeat them often. And we reconsider them if necessary. And this is the most important one, we follow through with both the norms and the consequences as even elaborately as possible. And believe me, I've seen teachers who don't do this, so I'm repeating it. Our students are watching us, and they discuss any inconsistencies outside of the class and just frown at us inside of the class if we do it. But we can also talk about this at class meetings, another way of really proactively addressing this. So in short, we treat the norms and consequences as a sacred part of our learning environment. A sacred part, because they are. They're the backbone of our learning environment, in fact. And if we don't have them in place, and if we don't follow through religiously, yes, I am now getting back on top of my soapbox, we might as well forget about the projects because our students are not going to feel as safe and protected and valued as they need to. And norms and consequences are at least 50% of this. This is no exaggeration. Many teachers tell me that what worries them most about project-based learning is that they don't feel they're able to handle their students working more autonomously. Having norms and consequences and adhering to them changes everything. You'll find these in the folder so you can use them, adapt them to yourself. I've found that they really are useful, very simple. They incorporate everything if you really look at them, but please feel free to adapt them and have fun because you are going to see huge changes. Remember to have them sign. remember to have them sign them. So now we've reviewed 9 of the most common emotional triggers that make assimilating new information a little bit difficult for your students. But most importantly, now you have 9 new tools to dissolve these triggers, so you have a really strong affective domain. Now go ahead and do the activity and formative assessment for this lesson, and you're going to see how much you really have learned and how much of this information you can pass on to your colleagues if you want to. So we'll see you soon for lesson 5, and we're going to explore This is Fantastic. We're going to go over positive ways to encourage our students to stay on task. How's that? Can't wait to see you for lesson 5. So now we've reviewed 9 of the most common emotional triggers that make assimilating new information a little bit difficult for your students. But most importantly, now you have 9 new tools to dissolve these triggers, so you have a really strong affective domain. Now go ahead and do the activity and formative assessment for this lesson, and you're going to see how much you really have learned and how much of this information you can pass on to your colleagues if you want to. So we'll see you soon for lesson 5, and we're going to explore This is Fantastic, ways to embed positive reinforcement into our projects. Instead of rules and punishments, we're going to go over norms and consequences and positive ways. We're going to go over positive ways to encourage our students to stay on task. How's that? Can't wait to see you for lesson 5.